The Roman frontier, around the year 172. Far from the marble temples of Rome, an emperor lives among his soldiers. They are near the Danube River. On the other side of the river are the barbarians. Behind him is an empire struggling with disease, financial pressure, and war. Somewhere during this difficult period, Marcus Aurelius writes short notes to himself. These are not speeches for the Senate or orders for his army. They are simply reminders. Do not let anger control your judgment. Remember that fame disappears. Remember that death comes to emperors and slaves alike. Do the work that is in front of you. This lies at the center of Marcus Aurelius's life. He rules one of the largest empires in the ancient world, but the thing he tries hardest to control is himself. When Marcus becomes emperor in 161, Rome is still rich and powerful. But the long peace under his adoptive father, Antoninus Pius, does not continue. War begins in the east against Parthia. On the northern frontier, Germanic and Sarmatian peoples cross the Danube and threaten the Roman provinces. The emperor, who would later become famous for his thoughts about calm, is forced to spend years dealing with military crises. On one side stands the Stoic ideal: reason, discipline, and control over your own mind. On the other side is the real world: death, invasions, political pressure, and fear. Marcus cannot control events, but he will try to control the way he sees them and reacts to them. Marcus is born in Rome in 121 into a respected family. His father dies when he is still young, and influential relatives help with his education. He studies Latin and Greek, law, rhetoric, literature, and philosophy. Emperor Hadrian notices him. In 138, Hadrian arranges the succession in a rather complicated way. Antoninus Pius becomes his adopted heir, but Antoninus must then adopt Marcus and Lucius Verus. Suddenly, Marcus is placed on the path toward the highest position in the Roman world. For more than 20 years, Antoninus Pius rules, while Marcus learns how to govern a state. He holds public offices, studies legal questions, and prepares for responsibilities that very few people will ever face. Two teachers become especially important to him. Marcus Cornelius Fronto teaches him rhetoric, how to speak, persuade, and use language. Junius Rusticus leads him deeper into Stoic philosophy and introduces him to the teachings of Epictetus. Stoicism does not tell Marcus that pain is imaginary or that emotions should disappear. Its challenge is to separate what depends on your character and judgment from what does not depend on you. You cannot control whether another person insults you, but you can control whether you answer with cruelty. You cannot control when death will come, but you can control whether fear prevents you from doing your duty. In 161, Antoninus Pius dies. Marcus becomes emperor and does something unusual. He makes Lucius Verus his co-emperor with full imperial power. Rome now has two emperors sharing authority. For Marcus, the hardest moments are beginning. The first major crisis comes almost immediately. Parthia challenges Roman influence in Armenia and defeats Roman forces in the east. Lucius Verus travels there while experienced generals lead the campaigns. Eventually, Roman armies enter Mesopotamia and capture the Parthian capital, Ctesiphon. Rome wins. Then the northern frontier begins to break. Peoples including the Marcomanni and Quadi cross the Danube. Roman forces try to stop them. In 169, Lucius Verus dies, leaving Marcus as the sole emperor. He spends years near the Danube, organizing armies, negotiating with some tribes, fighting others, and trying to restore security along the frontier. The long wars have exhausted the state treasury, while the costs of soldiers, weapons, and strengthening the frontier have risen sharply. This is a moment when Marcus shows that he is close to ordinary people and sees himself as equal to his soldiers. During the crisis, he sells valuable imperial possessions at a public auction to raise money for the army. Marcus proves that he is not simply the image of a calm philosopher sitting safely in Rome and thinking about peace while other men fight. His reign is filled with violence. Roman armies burn settlements, take prisoners, and kill enemies. The empire he protects survives through military force. And yet, Marcus continues writing to himself. Parts of his work, Meditations, are directly connected with places from the northern military campaigns. The contrast is striking. Outside, weapons and reports of death. Inside, one question appears again and again. What kind of person will I become while all of this is happening? Marcus Aurelius did not create Stoicism. The philosophy had already existed for centuries, but his meditations show us something rare. Not a philosopher explaining a system to his students, but a powerful man trying to apply that system to himself. The work was written in Greek and was probably never intended for publication. Even the title Meditations came later. Much of the text feels like a series of personal exercises. The mechanism is simple. First comes the event. Someone insults you. An army invades. Someone you love dies. Your body turns against you. Then comes your judgment. This is unbearable. This has destroyed my peace. Stoic practice asks you to examine that judgment before it begins to control your next action. Is the event really under your control? What is under your control is your decision, your honesty, and your courage. The way you treat other people. Your willingness to do the duty that is in front of you. You can prepare carefully and act according to what you believe is right, but you cannot guarantee victory. That is why Meditations returns again and again to death, irritation, fame, and duty. The repetition matters. The book does not show a perfect Stoic. It shows a man who repeatedly reminds himself of the standards he is trying to follow. He does not depend on the army to protect him. The defense he builds in these pages is not military. It is inside his own mind. In 175, a false report spreads that Marcus has died. In the eastern provinces, the general Avidius Cassius is proclaimed emperor. Syria and Egypt support him. Marcus now faces the possibility of civil war. Roman army against Roman army. Before the two armies can meet in open battle, the rebellion begins to collapse. Only a few months after being proclaimed emperor, Avidius Cassius is killed by two of his own officers. Marcus does not celebrate Cassius's death. Instead, he emphasizes his desire to show mercy to those involved in the rebellion. He would have preferred to defeat Cassius himself and give him the chance to answer for his actions before the Senate. This reaction shows how Marcus tried to put into practice the principles he constantly reminded himself of in Meditations, not to allow anger and the desire for revenge to control his decisions. But even when he shows mercy to the defeated, he cannot avoid the most difficult decision for any ruler, who should come after him. His son Commodus is prepared to succeed him and becomes co-emperor in 177. Marcus writes about reason, duty, and character. But the man who inherits his power becomes famous for a completely different kind of rule. The wise father chooses the wrong son. Roman succession does not follow one fixed rule. Earlier emperors had often adopted heirs because they lacked surviving biological sons. Marcus has a surviving son, and dynastic succession is politically understandable. But the result is disastrous. The reign of Commodus gradually becomes one of the most controversial and unstable in Roman history. At first, he still depends on advisors and experienced statesmen who served his father, but over time, he moves further away from them. Power becomes concentrated around his personal favorites, palace officials, and military commanders. They compete for influence and often use the emperor's name to follow their own interests. Commodus has neither the discipline nor the sense of duty that Marcus Aurelius tries to develop in himself. He is interested in spectacles, personal glory, and displays of physical strength. He becomes especially famous for taking part in gladiatorial performances. To Roman society, this is shocking behavior. The emperor is supposed to support the games, not behave like an ordinary gladiator. But Commodus enters the arena and presents himself as an unbeatable fighter. These actions are not simply strange behavior. They show a change in the way the emperor understands power. For Marcus Aurelius, power is a burden and a moral responsibility. For Commodus, it increasingly becomes a stage where he must be admired and constantly praised. The Senate, the army, and the people increasingly become audiences expected to confirm his greatness. As his suspicion grows, political purges begin. His enemies are accused of conspiracies, and some of the most influential people in Rome are executed. His rule becomes increasingly dependent on palace intrigues, accusations, and struggles between different groups around the emperor. In 192, the tension reaches its end. Commodus is killed in a conspiracy involving people from his closest circle. After his death, Rome enters a new period of civil conflict. Marcus does not live to see it. He returns to the Danube frontier. In March 180, at the age of 58, he dies while staying near the military camp at Vindobona. The exact circumstances of his death remain unclear. Marcus Aurelius rules for 19 years. His reign is far from the peaceful world suggested by the modern image of the philosopher-emperor. He is not perfect, and that is exactly what makes his writing so valuable. Meditations is not the work of a man who has mastered life. It is the collection of notes of a man struggling with fear, anger, grief, and uncertainty. An emperor can command a legion, but he cannot prevent betrayal. He can choose an heir, but he cannot control the person that heir will become. Marcus spends much of his life ruling other people. But the battle that outlives the Roman Empire is the battle to rule himself. And almost 2,000 years later, perhaps that is the part of his strength that still matters most.